My parents secretly tested my DNA after claiming I was not acting like their real child, and what they did with the results destroyed every relationship in our family forever. My parents have this way of making a normal conversation feel like you're sitting in a chair under a bright light, like you're being evaluated for a part you did not audition for. And if you fail the vibe check, they act like it's a character flaw, not just you having a different opinion. I'm 28, I live in Reno. I pay my bills, I show up to work. I forget to water my one plant until it looks offended. I'm not out here doing anything dramatic. The only big change lately is I stopped feeding them every detail of my life, which apparently is the same thing as declaring war. The last time I went over there, it was a Sunday afternoon, bright enough outside that the living room looked washed out. My mom had the blinds half closed like she always does, like she's trying to keep the world from seeing in, or keep us from seeing out. And my dad was already posted in his chair with his arms crossed, TV on mute, jaw tight, that whole setup. My mom did that thing where she kept wiping the same spot on the counter, not cleaning, just moving a paper towel around like a nervous tick. And she kept glancing at my dad like she was waiting for the cue. I'd only gone because she'd been texting about a box of my old stuff, supposedly important, like she couldn't just drop it off or mail it. No, I had to come there and receive it like a blessing. No hello that felt real, no how are you, just that thick silence and my dad going straight into it, talking about how I've been different, distant, disrespectful, how I'm not present, how I don't call enough, how I don't show gratitude the right way, how I act like I'm better than them. He was winding up, building his case, and I could feel my shoulders getting tense because I know that rhythm. It always ends with some demand. My mom finally stopped pretending to wipe the counter and came over to stand behind him, like a witness backing up the story. And my dad leaned forward and dropped this sentence like it was a fact he'd been holding for years. He told me I'm not acting like their real child. Not their real child, not like, you're being rude, not like, we miss you, but real child, like there's some official definition and I'm failing it. I did this stupid little laugh, just one sharp sound, because my brain does that when something is too ridiculous to absorb, and my mom's face tightened immediately like laughter is disrespect. My dad kept going. He started listing all the ways I don't fit. He talked about how I don't take advice, how I don't come to them first, how I don't share plans, how I don't let them help, how I'm secretive, and he kept using that word, secretive, like privacy is suspicious. I tried to pull it back to reality. I reminded him I'm an adult. I have a job that's busy. I don't sit around waiting to report my day like a teenager. And my mom jumped in with this soft, reasonable voice she uses when she wants to sound like the calm one. And she started talking about clarity, about how sometimes families need clarity, about how it would help to clear up questions. Questions, which is a wild thing to say when nobody asked an actual question yet. Then my dad mentioned they'd bought one of those kits, not a health screening, not a check your vitamin deficiency kind of thing. He described it like a family responsibility thing, like if I'm part of the family, I shouldn't mind. And my mom nodded like she was watching a presentation. That was when my stomach did that drop, because I realized where they were aiming. They weren't talking about genetics like a fun ancestry thing. They were talking about it like a weapon, like a trap they could spring and then act offended when I didn't smile about it. I told them no, not a debate, just no, and I grabbed the box my mom had been making a big deal about. It was already sitting by the hallway like she'd staged it, and I left before it turned into a shouting match, because in that house, the louder you get, the more they can blame you for being emotional. On the drive home, I kept replaying that phrase, real child, and the more I thought about it, the more gross it felt, because it wasn't just an insult, it was a threat. It was them saying, we get to decide if you belong. At my apartment, I opened the box on the floor, mostly junk, old notebooks, a couple photos, random knickknacks I forgot existed, and right on top, there was an envelope with my name written in my mom's handwriting, which is very neat and very deliberate, like she's always writing for an audience. Inside was a printed order confirmation, a screenshot of an email for a DNA paternity-style test. The shipping address was their house, and the name on the order was mine, my full name, spelled exactly right, and the order date was months ago. I stared at it for a long time because there is no normal explanation for ordering something like that in your kid's name, months ago, and then pretending you're just now introducing the idea. My first instinct was to call my mom, which is probably the most depressing part of this, that my first instinct in a crisis is still to reach toward the person who causes them. She picked up with that too sweet hello, and the second I mentioned the order confirmation, she went quiet in a way that felt like a door closing. Then she said the one sentence that made me feel like I'd swallowed ice. She told me I wasn't supposed to see that. Not, what are you talking about? Not, that's not what it looks like, just, you weren't supposed to see it. I pushed for how they could even do this, how they got anything from me, and she tried to slide into the concern story, peace of mind. Your father has been worried. You've been distant. This would calm him down, like mailing my DNA off without consent is a soothing family activity. Then she started crying, not soft, not a few tears, but that heavy sobbing that's meant to make you feel guilty for asking. She kept repeating that I'm tearing the family apart, that I always do this, that I always make them the villains. And then she hung up like she was slamming the phone down in her mind, even if phones don't do that anymore. 2 days later, my dad texted from a number I didn't recognize, like he'd gotten a burner number out of spite, and the message was short and smug. He told me to stop being dramatic. He told me we need to talk in person. He told me I'll understand soon. I ignored it because I could already feel the trap. If I respond, I'm participating. If I show up, I'm consenting to whatever performance they've planned. A week after that, my cousin Lakin messaged me asking if I'm okay. And I don't even talk to Lakin often. We're more like holiday cousins, people you see in a living room once or twice a year. So that made my stomach twist. I asked what she meant, and she got careful. She said she didn't want to gossip. She said she just didn't want me blindsided. And then she finally admitted my aunt had been talking, that my dad was devastated because the DNA results came back and showed something, and now the family is, her word, shaken. Shaken, like we're all standing in a building that just got hit. I asked what it showed. She wouldn't say. She kept pushing me to call my parents, like if I call them the truth becomes manageable. So I called my dad, and he answered on the first ring like he'd been waiting for the moment. He went right into that wounded voice that always makes him sound like the victim of whatever he's doing. He talked about betrayal, about humiliation, about how he knew it, how he always knew something was off, and then he dropped it. The test showed I'm not his biological child. I went cold, not because of biology, but because of what he was doing with it. He was using it to justify everything, to rewrite every fight we ever had into evidence. I demanded to know how they even tested me, and he refused to answer. He kept calling it truth. He kept acting like methods don't matter when you're convinced you're right. And then he got to the part that made me actually feel panic. He told me he already told people. He told my grandparents. He told his siblings. He told my brother Tobin. He said it like it was righteous, like he was doing the family a favor, like he was cleansing the bloodline or something. And I hate even typing that because it sounds dramatic, but that's the vibe. That's what it felt like. I called Tobin immediately, and he didn't answer the first time, which is typical. He ignores calls when he's annoyed, and when he finally picked up, his voice was already sharp, like he'd been waiting for the fight. He'd heard the story already, not the cautious version, the version where my mom is a liar and I'm the proof, and he kept talking over me, accusing me of knowing, accusing me of looking down on them, accusing me of acting like I'm not part of the family because I'm not, and every sentence sounded like my dad had been feeding him lines. I tried to tell him I didn't know anything. I tried to tell him I never took any test. I tried to tell him none of this makes sense, and he just got colder, like confusion was weakness. After that call, I sat on my couch staring at the wall, and the weirdest part was I didn't even feel sad first. I felt invaded, like my life had been cracked open and passed around, and I couldn't even see what they were passing. I called my mom again, and this time her voice was tired, not crying, not sweet, tired in that flat way like she'd run out of performance energy. She admitted she did it. She didn't even pretend anymore. And when I pushed about how she got anything from me, she got weirdly vague. She made this comment about how people leave enough behind without realizing, which made my skin crawl because it confirmed my fear. They took something of mine without me knowing. I tried to pin down the actual results, and she repeated the same thing my dad said, not his biological child. But then she started sliding into excuses, talking about how it doesn't matter, how he raised me, how he's embarrassing himself, how he's burning everything down because he can't handle feeling foolish. And then she made it worse, because she tried to justify it as protection. She told me she was trying to protect me, because if my dad decided I wasn't his, he'd toss me away, and she needed something ready, something to calm him down. So her version was, I violated you to protect you from his reaction to violating you. It was a loop. A stupid loop where no matter what happens, they're the heroes and I'm the problem. Later that night, my dad texted again, and this time he sent a photo of the results report, my name, his name, an official-looking conclusion line saying not biologically related, and he added a message that made my stomach turn. He told me he was sending it to everyone because they deserve to know. I told him to stop. I told him this is my information, my identity, my privacy, and he came back with this line that is so on brand it's almost funny. He told me it's his information too. His life was built on a lie, and consequences are coming. Consequences, like I'm the one who cheated, like I'm the one who lied, like I'm not the person whose DNA got taken like it was a paper clip. That night I barely slept because my brain kept doing inventory every time I've been at their house, every water bottle, every napkin, every time my mom pushed a new supplement or offered me some random immune support thing, every time she insisted I use a specific cup, and I know how paranoid that sounds. But once you see your name on a test order you didn't place, your brain goes places. The next morning, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. Subject line was something like family update. And before I even opened it, I knew. Because of course my dad didn't just tell people, he packaged it. He sent a group email. I opened it and my jaw actually dropped. He'd attached the report. He'd written this long rant about betrayal and truth. And he'd CC'd my grandparents, my aunt and uncle, Lakin, another cousin, and Tobin. And he'd added this little line at the end about how he expects the family to stand with him, and he expects my mom to stop lying, and he expects me to stop pretending. It felt like I was watching someone set off fireworks inside a house, just lighting match after match and smiling. My phone started buzzing, call after call, texts, voicemails, and I didn't answer most of them because I couldn't even decide what the truth was yet. I didn't have a truth to defend. I just had my life being passed around like a chain email. By the afternoon, my grandmother had left me a voicemail that sounded like she was trying not to cry, talking about how this can't be true, asking if I know who my real father is. And then she said something that made me want to crawl out of my skin. She called me a child of shame. Child of shame, like I'm an object that carries someone else's sin. That's when I realized this wasn't just a private meltdown. This was going to affect every relationship forever. Because even if the biology part is true, the way they're handling it is poison. And once people drink it, they don't forget the taste. I took the day off work, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't focus without feeling like I was going to puke. And I spent hours doing the most depressing research of my life, looking up how at-home DNA tests even work, what consent means, how results can be wrong, what happens if someone submits a sample without permission, what identity theft looks like when it's done by your own parents. And that's where I hit the first twist that actually mattered. These kits are not magic. They're not chain of custody. They are not court-level proof. They are a product. And if my mom sent in something that wasn't clean or wasn't mine or was contaminated or was the wrong person, the result could be wrong. And even if it's right, the way they got it is still not okay. That night, I decided I wasn't going to argue about biology with people who treat me like a concept. I was going to focus on one thing. My parents used my name to order something. They took a sample without permission. And my dad distributed a report with my personal info attached like it was a family newsletter. So I called the company on the report, the number on the footer, hands shaking, and I expected to get some bored call center person. But the woman who answered got serious fast when I explained. She asked me to verify the name and order number. And then she asked me a question that made my stomach flip again. She asked if I personally consented to the test and personally provided the sample. I told her no. I told her I never touched a kit. I told her my parents did it. And there was this pause. Then she told me they have a process for suspected non-consensual submissions. And she told me they could open an investigation. And she told me they could lock the results from further access. Lock the results, which sounded like shutting a barn door after the animals ran into the highway. But it was still something. Then she asked me something else. She asked if I'd received the kit at my address or if it went elsewhere, and I told her my parents' address. And she got even more serious. She asked if I recognized the email on the account, and she read out my mother's email address. My mom didn't just use my name. She used her own email, like she assumed she owned both of us. The woman told me they were going to flag it. She told me they were going to restrict access. She told me they might need a statement from me. And then she said something that made my head buzz. She said the sample type on record was not saliva in a tube. It was a cheek swab with a separate envelope. That detail mattered because I remembered. And this is going to sound small and stupid, but months ago I was at their house for a family dinner, and my mom was pushing this whitening strip thing, like a whole kit. And she kept insisting I try it because my smile would look better in photos. And she'd handed me these little swabs to prep my teeth. And I'd rolled my eyes and done it because I wanted her to shut up. I'd thrown the swab in the trash, in their bathroom, like a normal person. And at the time it meant nothing. Now it meant everything. I sat there on my couch staring at the wall, realizing my mother probably dug a swab out of her trash to mail my DNA to a company. And my dad was now using the result to blow up our family. I didn't even have the energy to feel disgusted properly. I just felt tired, like my body was trying to shut down to protect me. I told the company I'd provide a statement. I asked them to email me the steps. And then I called Tobin again, because even if we're not close, he's my brother, and he was being fed a story where I'm the outsider. And I needed him to at least understand one fact. I did not consent, and our parents are acting like this is entertainment. He picked up this time, still sharp, still defensive, and I could hear people in the background, like he was at my parents' house, which made me feel like I was calling into enemy territory. He started talking over me again, and instead of debating, I told him one thing. I told him our mother did the test under my name without permission. I told him the company confirmed the account email is hers. I told him consent matters. And I told him even if the biology part is true, our parents do not get to treat me like a puzzle piece they can pull out and toss. He went quiet for a second, and then he did what he always does when he's uncomfortable. He got mean. He told me I'm always dramatic. He told me I'm trying to make mom the villain. He told me dad is hurt. And then he told me something that made my stomach drop again. He told me dad was already talking about changing things, like the family trust, like the will, like who gets what. So that's the real reason this exploded the way it did. Not just feelings, not just betrayal, money, inheritance, ownership, who belongs. I told Tobin to stop letting them drag him into this, and he hung up. That night, I got another message from my cousin Lakin. She told me my grandparents were furious with my mom. She told me my dad was packing a bag. She told me everybody was taking sides, and she asked me if I knew who my real dad is. I stared at that message so long my phone screen dimmed, because what do you even say? I don't know, and I also don't want to play this game. So I didn't answer, and I went to bed with my phone on silent, and I woke up to a knock at my door that made my heart jump. It was my apartment manager, looking uncomfortable, holding an envelope, and he told me a man had come by earlier asking for me by full name, leaving something, and he'd said he was family. Inside the envelope was a printout of the DNA report again, plus a handwritten note from my dad telling me to stop hiding, to stop letting my mother poison me, and to come to their house to talk like an adult. And the last line of the note, the one that made my hands go cold, was him telling me if I don't show up, he's going to tell everyone the rest. The rest, like there was more he planned to invent, or more he planned to reveal. Either way, it was a threat. So yeah, that's where I'm at. My parents secretly tested my DNA because I wasn't acting like their real child. My dad took the results and blasted them to the entire family like a press release. My mom is alternating between crying and acting like it was for my own good. My brother is taking their side because he thinks the family is a team sport. And now my dad is threatening to tell the rest, unless I show up and submit to whatever performance they want. I don't even know what I'm asking for here. I think I just need someone to tell me I'm not crazy for feeling like my identity got stolen by the people who are supposed to be safe. Update, 10 days later. I didn't go to their house. That was the first decision I made that felt like it was mine, because every part of me wanted to show up and defend myself like this is a debate you can win if you say the right words. But I know that house. I know how it works. You walk in, you get cornered, you get interrupted, you react, and then your reaction becomes the story. Instead, I did paperwork, which is not empowering. It's just what you do when your parents decide to turn your life into a case file. The DNA company sent me a form to report non-consensual submission. It was basically a sworn statement: name, address, order number, confirmation that I did not consent, confirmation that I did not provide the sample, and a section asking who likely submitted it. Typing my mother's name into that form made my hands shake in this dumb way, like my body still thinks she's untouchable, like she's a force of nature, and not just a person who went through a trash can. I submitted it, and they locked the results from the account. They told me they'd been accessed multiple times already, which was both obvious and still sickening to hear. And they told me they were going to note the account for suspected fraud. That part felt like a tiny win, not because it fixes anything, but because it was the first time an outside party said, "This is not normal." My dad did not take that well, because the second he realized he couldn't keep forwarding the report, he started doing it the old-fashioned way. He started showing up. He came to my work first, which I know sounds like something out of a show, but he actually did. He walked into the lobby like he owned the place, asked the receptionist for me, and when she said she couldn't pull me from a meeting, he left a folder with my name on it. My coworker Jessa brought it to my desk with this look, like she didn't want to be involved, but she also couldn't pretend it didn't happen, and the folder was thick, like he'd prepared exhibits. Inside was a printed timeline of my life, my birth year, school years, random milestones, and alongside it he'd typed little comments about how I never fit, how I was always distant, how I never bonded like a real child, how I never looked like him, and then he'd stapled the DNA report on top again like a conclusion. It was unhinged, and what made it worse is he wrote it in that calm business tone, like a manager documenting performance issues. I walked straight to my supervisor and told her my father is harassing me. I didn't over-explain. I didn't make it about DNA. I made it about behavior. He came to my work. He left documents. I need him barred. My supervisor took it seriously, probably because she could see I was shaking, and she asked security to put his name on the list. And she told reception not to accept anything from him again, and then she asked if I needed time off. I didn't take time off, not because I'm tough, but because I didn't want him to have that power. I didn't want him to disrupt my life and then watch me crumble. That same night, Tobin texted me for the first time since the blow-up, not to ask if I'm okay, not to ask if I consented, just a message telling me mom isn't doing well, telling me dad moved out, telling me grandparents are furious, telling me I need to stop making this worse. Stop making this worse. Like I'm the one who ordered the kit, like I'm the one who blasted a report, like I'm the one who showed up at someone's workplace with a folder. I didn't respond, and then he sent another message, this one saying dad is talking about contesting something from years ago, and I didn't even understand what he meant at first. I had to read it 3 times, and then I realized he was talking about my birth certificate. My dad was claiming my mom committed fraud by putting his name down, and he was talking about consulting a lawyer, not because he actually wants legal clarity, but because he wants leverage. He wants the threat to hang in the air. He wants everyone to look at my mom like a criminal and look at me like evidence. That's when it clicked that the DNA report is just the spark. The fire is control, money, image, ownership, and now the whole family is lining up like it's a sport. My grandmother called me 2 days after Tobin's texts, and I answered because it's my grandmother and I'm still wired to answer. And she started crying immediately, not in a comforting way, in a guilty way, talking about how she didn't mean what she said, talking about how she's old and she doesn't understand these tests, talking about how she just wants the family back. Then she pivoted, because of course she did, and she started asking if I'd forgive my dad if he calms down, asking if I'd come over for a family meeting, asking if I'd just explain myself, like I'm the one who did something, like I'm the one who needs to earn the right to exist. I told her I didn't consent to any test. I told her my mother submitted something without permission. I told her my dad is harassing me at work, and I told her I'm not doing a family meeting in a living room where my dad controls the room. She got quiet, then she said something that honestly hurt more than the child of shame line. She said, well, your father is hurting, and sometimes when a man is hurting, he says things, and a mother has to keep the peace. So apparently, the job of every woman in my family is to absorb damage and call it peace. I told her no, and I ended the call before I started crying, because I did not want to cry over that conversation. It deserved nothing from me. Here, where things got uglier in a way I did not expect, the DNA situation bled into finances, because my dad did not just want to disown me emotionally, he wanted to cut me out materially, and he wanted to do it in a way that punished my mom too. My mom has a small family account she opened when I was a teenager. It's basically a joint savings thing she used to deposit birthday money, little stuff. She always liked having her name on it because she likes access, and I've been meaning to close it for years but never bothered because it felt harmless. A week after my dad's workplace stunt, the bank flagged that account for suspicious activity, and I got a notification because my name is on it. There were multiple attempts to move money out, not huge amounts, but enough to matter, and the attempts were made through an in-person request at a branch, not online. I called the bank, and the person I spoke to sounded careful. She asked if I'd authorized anyone to withdraw. I said no, and she asked if my mother or father had access. I told her my mother is a joint holder, and my father is not. And the woman said okay, and she told me the person who came in claimed to be acting on behalf of my mother with a signed note. A signed note, which instantly made me think of my dad, because he's the one who loves fake documents. He's the one who thinks a signature is a magical key, and my mother's signature is easy to copy if you've watched her sign things for decades. I went to the branch the next day, and I brought my ID, and I asked the manager to explain, and she pulled up the notes, and she told me someone had come in with a handwritten authorization from my mom, asking to withdraw funds, and when the teller questioned it, the person got angry and left. The manager could not tell me who it was, privacy, but she did tell me the person was a man, older, and he kept repeating that he had every right because it was family money. Family money, my dad's favorite phrase when he wants something. So now he wasn't just blowing up relationships, he was trying to siphon money, either to punish my mom, or to take control of anything connected to me, or both. I closed the account that day, which I should have done years ago, and the manager helped me document the suspicious attempts in case it became a bigger thing. That night my mom showed up at my apartment, not texting first, not calling, just showing up. And I know this is going to sound small, but the way she stood in the hallway mattered. She was holding her purse with both hands like she was bracing, eyes red, hair not done the way she usually does it, and she kept glancing over her shoulder like she expected my dad to appear. I didn't invite her in right away. I stood in the doorway like a bouncer, and she started talking fast, not quite crying, more like panicked, telling me dad is out of control, telling me he's blaming her for everything, telling me he's telling people she tricked him, telling me she's scared he's going to ruin her, and then she tried to pull me into her side of the war by calling me her only ally. Hearing my mother call me an ally was surreal, because she doesn't treat me like a person most of the time. She treats me like an extension of her, and now she wanted me to stand next to her as proof she's still a good mother. I asked her one thing, and I kept it narrow on purpose. I asked her if she dug that swab out of her trash and mailed it, and her face changed. She looked ashamed for about half a second, and then she hardened, and she started justifying again, talking about how she had to, how my dad demanded answers, how she didn't know what else to do, how he wouldn't stop, how she was protecting me. The protection line again, like she's reading from a script. I told her that was the moment everything broke, not the results, not the email, that moment, the decision to take something from me without asking and send it away, because it told me she would rather violate me than face my dad. She started crying harder then, and she kept saying she didn't know what would happen. She didn't know he'd do this. She didn't know he'd tell everyone, and I couldn't even process how childish that sounded, because she knows my dad. She knows exactly what he does when he feels wronged. He turns it into a spectacle. I told her I filed a fraud report with the company, and she looked genuinely shocked, like she didn't think I'd dare involve anyone outside the family, and she asked if I'm trying to get her in trouble. I told her she already got herself in trouble, and I told her I'm not covering for her anymore. That's when she said something that made my whole stomach twist. She admitted my dad isn't the only one who's been suspicious. She admitted she's had doubts too, doubts about me, doubts about whether I'm really hers. I just stared at her, and she started rambling, trying to explain it away, talking about postpartum fog, talking about how she sometimes looked at me and didn't feel connected, talking about how I was hard as a baby, how I didn't soothe the way she expected, how Tobin was easier, how Tobin felt like hers and I didn't. It was like she was confessing something she'd been holding for years, and it wasn't even about biology, it was about entitlement. She wanted a child who mirrored her, and when I didn't, she decided something must be wrong with me. I told her to leave, not screaming, just done, and she stood there in the hallway crying, saying she has nobody now, and I told her she should have thought of that before she treated my DNA like a tool, and I shut the door. I locked it, and I slid down onto the floor, and I realized I was shaking like I'd been outside in winter, and I wasn't even cold. The next day, Tobin called, and he was angry, not worried, angry. He accused me of throwing Mom out, accused me of making her cry, accused me of siding with Dad, which is funny because I'm not siding with either of them. I'm refusing both. But in our family, refusing is seen as betrayal. He told me Dad is filing for divorce. He told me Dad is going to try to contest paternity legally. He told me grandparents are demanding answers. And then he hit me with a line that made me realize this is beyond repair. He told me if Dad is not my father, then Tobin doesn't see why I should be in the will at all. So there it was, clean, money belonging as a transaction, love as a legal document. I didn't fight him. I didn't try to convince him. I just told him to stop calling me unless he wants to talk like a human, and I ended it. After that, I did two things. I filed a police report for identity theft, because my name was used on an order and my data was spread, and I placed a credit freeze, because I don't trust my parents not to open something in my name if they think it serves their story. And then I scheduled my own DNA test through a medical clinic with proper consent and chain, because I wanted my own information from a source I chose, not a report I got forwarded in a group email like a meme. That appointment was humiliating in a way I can't really explain. Sitting in a clinic room because your parents turned your genetics into gossip, signing papers about consent like you're undoing a crime scene, and all I could think was, I shouldn't have to do this. I shouldn't have to prove anything, but I need to know what's true so I can stop spinning. The results were going to take a couple weeks, and those weeks felt like standing on a platform waiting for a train you don't even want aboard, because no result fixes what my parents already did. During that waiting period, my dad escalated again. He sent physical copies of the original report to my grandparents' house. He sent one to my aunt. He sent one to Tobin's workplace, because apparently he learned nothing from being blocked at mine. My aunt called me furious, not at me, at him, and she told me he'd been ranting about how he was robbed, how he raised someone else's kid, how he deserves compensation, and she told me he was talking about suing my mom, as if he can sue his way out of shame. My aunt is the only person in my family who has ever been blunt in a helpful way. She told me to protect myself. She told me to stop hopping, they'll wake up. She told me the family is splitting, and I'm going to get blamed no matter what, because it's easier to blame the child than admit the adults are sick. That was the first time I felt like someone saw the situation clearly without trying to make it my job to fix. So yeah, 10 days later, my parents are separated. My dad is acting like a crusader. My mom is acting like a victim. My brother is acting like a guard dog. My grandparents are swinging between sobbing and condemnation. And I'm waiting on a clinic result that I shouldn't even have to care about, because even if it says I'm related to everyone, the family I knew is already gone. Update 5 weeks later. The clinic result came back. And I opened it alone in my apartment with my laptop balanced on my knees like I was about to see a grade report that decides my future. It confirmed I'm biologically related to my mother. It also confirmed I'm not biologically related to my dad. So the home kit result wasn't some random contamination miracle. The core point is real. And I did not feel what I expected. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel grief. I felt this flat, tired acceptance. Like, okay, that's a fact. Now what? Because the real damage wasn't the fact. It was the way they used it. I told my aunt first, because she's the one person who's been consistent, and she asked if I want her to tell anyone, and I told her no. Nobody gets to carry my information around like a torch now. I'm done with that. My mom found out anyway, not because I told her, but because she's my mom and she knows how to sniff out things she wants. She called me the next day with this weird energy, half eager, half terrified, and she told me she knows I did a clinic test. When I asked how she knew, she admitted she looked through my mail at their house months ago and saw a reminder postcard from the clinic network. Not the same appointment, but enough for her to guess, which is just, of course she did. She started talking fast again, trying to turn it into something we could survive, telling me we can get through it, telling me my dad is the problem, telling me Tobin is being influenced, telling me the family will calm down. Then she dropped her real request. She wanted me to come to court with her for the divorce hearing and back her up. She wanted me to stand next to her and confirm that she raised me, that my dad is overreacting, that he's being cruel. She wanted me as a prop. I told her no, and she got quiet in that dangerous way. And then she asked me the question I've been dreading since the beginning. She asked if I want to know who my biological father is. I told her I don't care, which is partly true and partly self-defense, because if she says a name, that name becomes a grenade too, and I don't want another explosion. She told me it's not that simple. She told me I deserve to know. She told me she's been carrying this for years. And then she finally confessed the part that explains so much of my dad's behavior. My dad found out years ago, not through DNA, through rumors, through a comment from a relative, through something that got under his skin. And instead of confronting it like an adult, he stored it. He stored it like a weapon he could pull out when I stopped behaving like a real child. So this wasn't just my mom's secret. It was my dad's patience, his long simmering plan, his excuse for control. And when I started pulling away, he decided it was time to detonate it. My mom tried to frame herself as the protective one again. She told me she stayed because she didn't want to break the family. She told me she stayed because Tobin was young. She told me she stayed because my dad would ruin her. And she told me she stayed because she thought she could manage him. Manage him, like she was handling a wild animal, like she didn't choose him every day. I told her I'm not going to court with her, and I told her I'm not going to be used as a shield, and she started crying. But the crying didn't hook me this time. It just sounded like noise. Then she did the thing that finally snapped whatever empathy I still had. She told me if I don't help her now, she'll have nothing, and she said it like it was my responsibility to pay her back for raising me. That's the core of it. My parents don't see me as a person. They see me as debt, and they want to collect. I ended the call, and I blocked her number for the first time in my life, not as a threat, not as a dramatic move, just because I needed the silence. 2 days later, my dad showed up at my apartment complex again, and he didn't get inside because the manager already knew his face by then. But he waited outside by the curb like a guy hopping to catch you on your way out. I saw him when I pulled in, and my hands went cold on the steering wheel, and he walked toward my car like he owned the air around it, and I stayed seated with the doors locked because I'm not stupid. He tried to talk through the glass. He was gesturing, face tight, mouth moving fast, and I cracked the window only a couple inches because I didn't want him yanking the door open if I stepped out. He went straight into his speech, the one he'd been polishing for weeks, about betrayal, about honor, about how he wasted his life, about how my mom stole years from him, about how he raised me anyway, and he kept circling back to one thing: money. He told me he was going to sue my mom for fraud. He told me he was going to recover what he's owed. He told me he was going to make sure Tobin is protected. And then he said the part that made my stomach turn. He told me I need to sign something. He had papers in his hand, and he pressed them against the window like I could read them through the glare. He wanted me to sign an affidavit acknowledging I'm not his child and waiving any claim to the family trust. He wanted my signature like a seal of legitimacy, like if I sign it, the story becomes clean. I told him no, and he switched from wounded to angry in one breath. His face changed. The corners of his mouth got sharp, and he told me I owe him. He told me I owe him because he paid for my childhood. He told me I owe him because he gave me his name, and he told me if I don't sign, he's going to make sure everyone knows I'm just like my mother. Just like my mother, which in his mouth meant liar, user, parasite, the kind of person who takes and then acts confused when everyone gets tired of it. He kept tapping the papers against the glass like the sound was supposed to hypnotize me into agreeing. And when I didn't reach for them, he slapped the window with his palm. Not hard enough to crack it, just hard enough to make my whole body flinch. Then he smiled like he enjoyed that, like fear is proof he's winning. The timing was stupidly perfect because my apartment manager rolled up in that little golf cart right then, and my dad snapped into his friendly voice so fast it made my stomach twist. Suddenly it was all, oh hey, just dropping something off for my kid, just family stuff, nothing to worry about. The manager didn't buy it. He asked if everything was okay, and my dad tried to turn it into a story about me being emotional and confused. He used the word unstable like he'd practiced it. Like he and my mom had been passing that word back and forth for years waiting for the moment it would stick to me. The manager told him he'd already been asked not to come onto the property, and my dad tried to talk over him, tried to shame him into backing down. Then the manager said he was calling it in if my dad didn't leave. My dad finally stepped back, pointed at me through the windshield like I was a target, muttered that he could make one phone call and ruin me, then walked off with the papers still in his hand like he was saving them for later. The manager asked if I wanted the police called, and my instinct was to say no because my whole childhood was built around keeping things quiet. But I thought about him showing up at my work, him sniffing around my bank stuff, him waiting outside my apartment like a debt collector, and I told the manager yes. It wasn't some dramatic scene. 2 officers showed up, took the info, asked if there were threats, wrote it down, and told the manager they could issue a trespass warning if my dad came back, which didn't feel like safety so much as a thin line drawn in pencil. But it was still a line. I went upstairs and sat on my couch with all the lights off, phone face down, waiting for the next wave, because once my parents decide they're in a story, they don't stop until somebody bleeds. The next morning, my aunt, my dad's sister, showed up at my door holding a manila envelope like she was delivering a package she didn't want to touch, and the first thing that hit me was the fact she had my address, meaning somebody handed it to her, and I didn't even have the energy to be surprised. I kept the door mostly closed and stayed in the doorway like a barrier. She launched into this breathless speech about how my dad is spiraling, my mom is manipulating everyone, the family is splitting, the grandparents want answers, and the whole time she kept glancing past me into my apartment like she was looking for evidence. Then the point finally came out. My dad wanted statements, he wanted signatures, he wanted everything clean enough for court, and he wanted me to sign the affidavit waiving any claim to the family trust. Not asking if I was okay, not asking how my name ended up on a DNA test order, just straight into money and paperwork, like the real tragedy to her was accounting. The envelope came forward again, I didn't take it, and she got annoyed, and her voice sharpened, and she told me my dad is telling people I knew all along, that I'm playing everyone, that I'm waiting to steal. And she said steal like it tasted good, like she finally had a reason to dislike me without feeling guilty. She asked if I could just write something up for the family so they can move on. Like I'm a customer service rep handling a complaint, and I told her the only thing going in writing is that my name was used without consent and my privacy was violated. Her face did that offended pinch like I'd cursed at her. Then she said my grandparents want to know if they should still treat me like family. That sentence made my chest feel hollow, because it wasn't even anger. It was just this calm statement that love is conditional and I'm currently failing the terms. The door closed, and I leaned against it for a second like it was the only solid thing in my life. 2 days later, my supervisor called me into her office again, and I knew before she spoke. My dad had called the company line, not yelling, not threatening, just that polite poison voice, asking if HR had concerns about my emotional stability, framing it as protecting the workplace, like he's doing everyone a favor by warning them about me. Security logged the number. Reception got instructions. My supervisor asked if I needed leave, and the weird part is my voice stayed steady when I said no. Because I was so tired of him controlling my schedule and my reputation. I needed one place where his drama didn't get a vote. That week the clinic mailed me a hard copy of my results summary because I requested it, and I stuck it in a folder in a cabinet like it was hazardous. Not because it wasn't information I wanted, but because every fact in this mess turned into ammunition the second it touched my family. Then my mom found a way around being blocked. Not by showing up this time, by leaving a handwritten note taped inside my mailbox door in the mailroom. Not mailed, not slipped under my apartment door, taped where she knew I had to see it. The note wasn't an apology, it was a demand dressed up as urgency, meet somewhere private. She has information that changes everything. If I don't listen, my dad controls the story forever. Private was the word that made my stomach flip, because private is where my family does damage. Private is where they corner you and then later pretend you agreed. So I picked the most boring public place I could think of with cameras and staff and people constantly walking through. The county building downtown. public records lobby, fluorescent lights, hard chairs, the kind of place where nobody expects drama and everybody hates lingering. My mom showed up early, looked smaller somehow, not physically, just the energy, like she'd been living on adrenaline and shame, and she kept scanning the lobby like my dad might materialize from behind a brochure rack. The moment I sat down, she started talking fast, trying to sound like she's on my side now, like she finally chose me. She talked about my dad suing her, my grandparents turning on her, Tobin being influenced. She tried to pull me in as her ally, and it was surreal because my whole life she's treated me like an extension, not an ally. Then she finally dropped it. She didn't say affair at first. She said donor. She said it like the word was supposed to soften everything, like donor makes it clean. Then she said it wasn't random, it was directed, and she said the name like it was inevitable, Calder, my dad's younger brother. My brain went blank in this very specific way, because Calder is real. Calder is not some shadow man from a secret. Calder is a person who's been at holidays, who's joked with me, who's handed me tools at my dad's place when I was a kid, who's disappeared for months at a time and then shown up loud and casual like nothing matters. My mom tried to keep talking, but all I could hear was the name bouncing around in my head, because suddenly every memory in my family had a hidden trapdoor under it. She framed it like a plan, like she did it to keep the family together, like she chose Calder so I'd still be blood and nobody could ever truly cut me out. She said it like she was proud of how clever it was. Then she started crying because she could tell it wasn't landing the way she wanted. I stood up and walked out without finishing the conversation, because if I stayed there, I was going to either scream or collapse, and she didn't deserve either. In my car, I called Calder, hands shaking so hard I almost dropped my phone. He answered with background noise like he was just living his normal life. And the second I said we need to talk right now, his voice changed, like he'd been waiting years for this call and dreading it the whole time. He told me to come to his workshop, an auto upholstery place behind a bigger building, not cozy, not private like a house, private like fluorescent lights and tools and open space, somewhere that felt real. Calder was already standing by a workbench when I got there, hands braced on the edge like he'd been holding himself upright, and he didn't pretend, no denial, no confusion, just a tight nod and a quiet admission. Yes, he was the donor. Yes, it was planned. Yes, he agreed because he thought he was helping. Then he admitted the part that actually sounded human. He regretted it the moment it became a secret. He said my dad has suspected for years. He said my dad confronted him once after a holiday when my dad was drunk and angry and kept staring at my face like he was doing math. Calder lied and told him he was imagining things, and Calder said he's hated himself for it ever since. He also said something that made everything click in a gross way. My dad can survive a story where he's the betrayed husband. He gets to rage and punish and be righteous. But a story where his own brother is involved makes him look stupid. And my dad would rather burn the house down than let anyone laugh at him. The one thing I needed from Calder was proof from a source my mom couldn't manipulate. So Calder agreed to do a clinic-handled paternity test with chain procedures. No drama, no bargaining, just agreement. And that was the closest thing to decency I felt from any adult in weeks. While that test was processing, my dad kept escalating through Tobin, because Tobin still thought loyalty was armor. Tobin showed up at my building at night and spam called from a blocked number until I picked up, then demanded I come down. And I went down because I didn't want him causing a scene for my neighbors. And the second I stepped into the lobby, he started delivering the family script. Dad's lawyer this, mom's fraud that, grandparents demanding answers, will changes, trust changes. Then the demand, sign the affidavit. When I refused, the insults came out, cold, selfish user, then the line he'd probably been saving for years. If I'm not Dad's kid, then I'm not his real sibling either. That one landed different, not like a punch, more like a door shutting, because it made everything simple. He didn't want a relationship. He wanted a hierarchy, and I didn't have a role he respected anymore. I walked to the desk and asked the night staff to call security, and Tobin's posture shifted the second he saw a uniform. Suddenly he wasn't brave, he was embarrassed. He left while muttering that I'm ruining everything. A week later, Calder's clinic result came back, and it confirmed he is my biological father. Seeing it in writing didn't feel like a twist. It felt like a nail going into a board, permanent, unarguable, and completely useless for healing anything. The only person I told was my aunt, because she's the one person who can handle information without immediately turning it into a weapon, and even she went quiet for a long time, then said, "Oh no," because she understood what it would do to the family, not just my parents, all of them. She told my grandparents, not because I wanted her to, because she said they were already treating me like a threat, and she wanted them to stop using me as a scapegoat. It didn't stop it, it just redirected it. My grandparents swung from blaming my mom to blaming Calder, then somehow managed to blame me too, because blaming me lets them pretend the system still works, like the problem is a person, not the family machine. My dad found out within days, because secrets don't survive in my family, they just change hands. He showed up at Calder's workshop. Calder told me later it was screaming, threatening, my dad trying to swing across a workbench, Calder's coworker threatening to call the police, and Calder locking himself in the office until my dad finally left. Then my dad started calling everyone, not just relatives, friends of relatives, anyone who would listen, telling them Calder stole his life. My mom engineered it. I'm proof the family is disgusting, and he's cutting everyone off. My mom tried to reach me again from a new number. Short, frantic messages about being sorry, about never meaning for this to go this far, about my dad controlling the story, and none of it mattered because she was still talking about story, not about me. That same week, Tobin showed up near my work, not inside, just waiting outside like he wanted to catch me. And I turned around and went back in and asked security to escort me to my car. And they did, no questions, because by then my family was a documented security issue, which is the saddest sentence I've ever lived. Final update, 4 months later. The divorce finalized. My dad got what he wanted in the ugliest way possible. He got to play wronged man. He got to freeze my mom out financially. And he got to walk away telling people he's starting over clean. And my grandparents backed him because they cannot handle a story where the family itself is rotten. They need a villain they can point at. Calder closed his workshop for a while because threats started showing up in voicemails, and his landlord got calls too. And Calder admitted he didn't understand how vicious my dad could be until he was on the receiving end, which is almost funny if it wasn't my whole childhood. At least he finally understood the scale. My dad cut Tobin off too, which broke Tobin in a way I didn't expect, because Tobin genuinely believed loyalty would protect him. But my dad doesn't run on loyalty. He runs on control, and once doubt spread about Tobin too, my dad couldn't use him as proof of anything anymore. My mom tried to save her relationship with my grandparents by throwing Calder under the bus, calling it a mistake, calling it pressure, calling it complicated, and my grandparents listened just long enough to decide they could keep loving her if they pretended I didn't exist. So she pivoted into blaming me for abandoning her. The same old script, just louder now. Tobin and I haven't spoken since the night security walked me to my car, and the last message he sent before I changed my number was another demand for a signed statement about money. Like that's the only language he has left. I filed complaints where I could about my name being used on the DNA order without my consent, not because it fixes anything, because I needed a record outside my family that this happened, and I locked down my credit because I don't trust my parents not to open something in my name if they think it serves their war. Work calmed down once months passed without new incidents. My supervisor stopped looking at me like I might crack, and my life got smaller but steadier. Like I finally stopped leaving handles on everything for someone else to grab. The only person from my old family I still talk to is my aunt, and even that is careful because she's still in the blast radius. She told me holidays are split now. 2 separate gatherings. My dad attends neither. My mom is invited to one only if she doesn't mention me. Tobin floats between them like a ghost, trying to find a room where he still belongs. Calder texts every couple weeks from his new number. Nothing heavy, just checking in. And it's strange because biologically he's my father and emotionally he's just a man who made a choice years ago and then watched it explode. There's no instant bond, no reunion scene, just 2 people trying to exist in the aftermath without pretending it's beautiful. The last thing I did, the one thing that felt like closing a door, was changing my name, not to Calder, not to my mom's maiden name, not to anything tied to any of them. I picked a last name that belonged to nobody in my family, filed the paperwork, waded through the processing, signed in front of a clerk who didn't care, then walked out with the stamped order and finally felt like my life belonged to me.